The Automobile Association says reducing the blood alcohol limit to 0 for drivers is not the solution to reducing road fatalities and to improve road safety. Now, government has issued an amendment to traffic laws proposing the current low blood alcohol limit actually be dropped to 0. Now, that proposal has been championed by Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula, but the AA says introducing heavy drunk driving laws, is unlikely to promote behavioural change. Let's check in with Legislating. He is spokesperson for the AA. He joins us now live from Pretoria. Legislating, good morning. I'm actually quite surprised that this is the response from the AA. Explain it to us.
So firstly, let me just say that our position has always been drink or drive. So from our perspective, we would not want anybody on the roads who are drinking in any way. But I think when you look at road safety and the concept of road safety in South Africa, where we are losing 13,000 people a year to road crashes, we think that road safety needs a bigger approach, and something in terms of education, something in terms of proper prosecutions, and we need a lot more law enforcers on our road. Looking at one specific aspect of road safety in terms of drunk driving is not going to be the solution. We currently have laws on our statute books deal with drunk driving, Michelle. Our question is, why are those not being applied? Why is that law not being implemented more effectively? You are legislating to enable yourself to promote road safety, but our view will remain, you can't legislate yourself out of a problem that requires boots on the ground. So you're changing one aspect of the law, and that aspect of the law is going to criminalize people who use medication that, for instance, contains alcohol. Those people are going to be arrested, charged, and possibly prosecuted, where there are bigger problems to deal with. We know that people drink and drive. Let's deal with that. We have that law to deal with. Let's implement it. Let's enforce it.
I want to talk to you about the issue of behavioural change in just a second, Leighton, but I want to ask you, just to the point of the 0 alcohol limit for drivers, if we hone in on our road fatalities, on those shocking numbers that you just mentioned there, how much of that is due to drunk driving? Do we know that?
Well, there is a large percentage, and unfortunately the complete breakdown is unavailable. The official numbers come from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. What we do know is that 92% of all fatalities on the country's roads are caused by human error. What percentage of that includes drunk driving, I think, remains one of those things we don't know. But again, road safety is something that is not going to be dealt with by one small piece of legislation. It requires a much broader implementation. It requires a lot more intensive education, something we've been speaking about for many, many years, and it requires proper prosecution of offenders. We have the laws on our books at the moment. I mean, what is going to change when we have a 0 limit, Michelle? How is that going to improve law enforcement? And if it is going to improve law enforcement, our question is, why can't it be improved within the current framework?
If we're already struggling with proper prosecution when it comes to driving offences, how are we going to crack down on a law of this nature? Is that what you're saying?
Well, exactly. I mean, we've got the law that currently says you can have a blood alcohol limit of 0.05, which effectively means your blood alcohol can't be higher than 0.049999, because by the time you're at 0.05, you're technically over the limit. We have that law that is currently in place in South Africa. How is that going to improve law enforcement when that limit goes down to 0? We don't see that it is going to make a difference, because if people are drinking and driving within the current framework, they are not going to change that behavior unless there is something that makes them change that, and that is going to be widespread extensive education and prosecution of offenders, and people must see that justice is being done. At the moment we don't, and that's why the current law is in a way ineffective, because it's not being implemented properly. We want to see better law enforcement on our roads, we want to see better equipment for law enforcers, and we want to see a lot more law enforcers on the road. That's how you deal with the problem of road safety in South Africa, not by legislating one piece of legislation to make it a 0 alcohol limit, which at the same time is going to criminalize those people who may use medication, as I said earlier, that contains alcohol, and they then become soft targets for law enforcers, and that's unfair.
Absolutely. You've been talking a lot about behavioural change for motorists. And I feel like you and I have discussed the issue, every year when we build up to this time of the year and we focus on road accidents again, we talk about the need for behavioral change. And one would think you just need to open up the newspaper or watch a news broadcast on Channel 405, get the horrific accidents that are happening in various parts of the country, and that's enough for behavioral change. And that's not the case.
No, unfortunately, Michelle, it isn't. And I mean, you quite rightly point out, we've seen over the last couple of weeks some horrific crashes, some in the Eastern Cape, some in KwaZulu-Natal, and there's a recurring theme. People are not adhering to the rules of the road. They overtaking on solid white lines. They're driving in the yellow barrier lane. They're not wearing their seatbelts. They're talking on their cell phones. These are the recurring themes that come across. And again, it's a question of let's take children at a very young age, educate them about road safety. Let's have campaigns that run throughout the year to educate not only children but adults as well about the dangers on the road, about the need for pedestrians to be visible, about the need for cyclists to adhere to the rules of the road as well, and people on motorbikes too. Those are the types of things that we need to be that we need to see happen. We need to see people who are offenders and repeat offenders being treated extremely harshly. They need to go through the courts. The courts need to punish them as harshly as they possibly can, and these things need to be publicized. We need to see that happen. But, the Traffic Law Enforcement Review Committee in 2019, Michelle, made a huge amount of recommendations in terms of traffic law enforcement in South Africa. Among those recommendations was we need double the amount of traffic law enforcers in our country at the moment. And when we have that, we may have a better chance of dealing with road safety.
Yeah. I mean, the same could be said for our police officers as well, also grossly understaffed. Leighton, if we look around the world at countries that are comparable to South Africa, countries that are getting it right, who are those countries and what are they doing differently?
Law enforcement. It's as simple as that. Offenders are punished harshly. You look at a country like the UK where the limit is 0.08. That's higher than what we have in South Africa. But it's all a question of enforcement and it's all a question of proper punishment. And unless you have those two factors in place, supported obviously by a safe road network, supported obviously by extensive education campaigns and marketing campaigns and advertising campaigns and awareness campaigns to adults as well, you can do as much as you want. You can't legislate yourself out of this problem, Michelle, and that's the point that we are making. You need to implement practical, workable solutions, and that, in our mind, includes proper punishment and proper law enforcement.
Leighton Beard, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us here on the AM report. It's a big story, government issuing that amendment to our traffic laws, proposing a blood alcohol limit of 0. I wonder what you think of it. The AA says this will in fact not help to reduce the number of fatalities we are seeing on the roads. We need more law enforcement, according to the AA. Let us know what your thoughts are on this issue.